Get out, or I'll call the police. My father's voice didn't just echo through the walls. It tore through everything I thought was still holding us together. I stood there barefoot in the hallway where my mother used to fold my clothes and hum old Fleetwood Mac songs. And now the man who once taught me how to ride a bike was threatening to have me arrested. Not for stealing, not for violence, but for refusing to smile at the woman sleeping in my mother's bed. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're watching from in the comments. My name is Skylar. I'm 24 years old. I recently graduated with a degree in graphic design, though honestly none of that felt important when I lost my mother. I still lived at home when it happened. Not because I couldn't leave, but because I didn't want her to feel alone. Cancer doesn't just steal lives. It steals time. And I was trying to give her as much of mine as I could. I never expected to stay longer than she did. But I also never expected what came next. This is the story of how I lost both my parents in very different ways. And how I took back what never should have been taken in the first place. She came exactly 32 days after the funeral. I know that because the flowers from the ceremony were still half alive. I had just cleaned out Mom's closet, the scent of her perfume still clinging to the wood. And suddenly, there was someone else's shoes at the door. A leopard print umbrella. Lipstick on a coffee mug that wasn't mine. Her name was Delilah. And everything about her felt wrong. Too bright. Too loud. Too fast. She was the kind of woman who made silence feel like a challenge. She talked over my grief. Laughed too hard at Dad's jokes. And touched things that didn't belong to her. Dad said she was just an old friend. That he'd run into her at the bank. But friends don't move in after 3 dinners and 1 bottle of wine. Friends don't comment on the curtains your mom picked out before chemo. Friends don't tell you that you should get out more. While you're still wearing black. At first, I tried to be civil. I told myself grief makes people do strange things. Maybe he was afraid of being alone. Maybe he was clinging to the first voice that wasn't whispering condolences. But I wasn't just sad anymore. I was angry. Because she wasn't just filling space. She was replacing it. She started rearranging furniture. Moved Mom's wedding photo off the mantel. Put up some weird abstract canvas she said she bought in Santa Fe. She changed the kitchen towels. Threw away the tea kettle my mom loved. Called the dining room stuffy, and said we should eat in the den. She didn't ask. She just acted. Like she owned the air between the walls. Like she'd always been part of this house, my mother's house. And my dad let her. Worse, he encouraged her. Laughed at her jokes. Watched her with that half-sleepy gaze I used to see reserved only for my mom. I tried to talk to him. One evening after dinner. I sat across from him at the same table, where we once did puzzles during lockdown. I asked gently, "Do you think Mom would have liked her?" He didn't flinch. Didn't even lift his eyes. He just muttered, "Don't bring your mother into this, Sky. She's not here." Then he got up and left his half-finished plate on the table. Like I was the one who'd said something inappropriate. And maybe I had. Because truth always sounds ugly when someone's trying to forget it. I stepped into the room. And for a second, I thought I was hallucinating. Delilah was sitting on my mother's bed. Wearing her robe. Holding one of her old journals. Fingers flipping through the pages like she had every right. Next to her, the vanity drawers were wide open. Lipsticks, pearls, faded photos. My mother's scent was in the air. That familiar blend of lavender and almond oil. And there she was desecrating it. I didn't even think. I didn't pause. I didn't try to be polite. "Get out!" I shouted. "Don't touch her things. Ever." Delilah jumped like she'd been burned. The journal slipped from her hands and hit the floor. Every single thing in this room is a memory. A heartbeat. A breath I'm trying not to forget. "You don't belong in here. This is not your space. This is hers. And you don't get to erase her." She stammered. "I was just organizing. Your father said." "I don't care what he said. This room is not his to give away. And you are not welcome in here." I walked over and grabbed the robe off her shoulders. Threw it on the chair without touching her. And pointed at the door. "Leave. Now. And don't ever step into this room again." She hesitated. Like she was calculating her next move. But when she saw my face, the tears in my eyes, the fire behind them. She backed away and left. But I knew that wasn't the end. Delilah didn't take being told no kindly, and I had just declared war. That night, the silence in the house felt heavier than ever. Even the walls seemed colder, like they were waiting for something to explode. And it did. The next morning, I woke up to banging on my door. It was my father. His face was red, his eyes tired, but not from sadness. From rage. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he barked. "You embarrassed Delilah. You humiliated her." I tried to explain that she was invading spaces that weren't hers, that she had no right. But he wasn't listening. He didn't want logic. He wanted submission. "You don't get to tell me who belongs in this house," he said. "You're not the one in charge here, Skylar." I stared at him and realized something I never wanted to believe. He had already picked sides, and I wasn't on his. That day, I knew something had shifted for good. Delilah had gotten into his head. She was smart, always pretending to be soft when he was watching. But when he wasn't, she moved like she owned the place. She gave instructions to the cleaner, changed Wi-Fi passwords, asked about the mortgage. She was sinking her claws into everything that was once ours. And my father was too blind to see. Or maybe he didn't want to. By the end of that week, my key card stopped working. The locks had been changed. No explanation. No warning. Just silence. Until the door opened slightly, and my father's voice came through the crack. "You're not welcome here anymore, Skylar. Get your things and leave. And if you try anything, I will call the police." I didn't cry. Not after the door slammed. Not after the locks clicked shut. Not even when I heard my father's voice saying, "She'll calm down eventually. She just needs to learn her place." I stood there on the porch with my bag in one hand and my mother's old scarf in the other. Cold air bit at my face, but my chest felt hotter than fire. He had chosen her. Not because she was better. Not because she was right. But because she made him feel something he couldn't face alone. Like grief could be ignored if it wore lipstick and smiled. I got in my car, drove 2 blocks, parked under a street lamp, and sat in silence. I wasn't homeless. I had friends. An old roommate. Even my aunt had space for me. But this wasn't about where I'd sleep. It was about what had been stolen. Because that house, it wasn't his to claim. I opened my backpack and pulled out my phone. Tucked in the back pocket was something I hadn't thought about in months. A slim, hardbound folder. Inside it, a scanned copy of a document I'd helped Mom file the year before she died. The deed to the house. Her name. Her signature. Dated and sealed. She told me once, "Sky, if anything ever happens to me, this house is yours. Make it your home. Not a memory." I thought she meant years from now. Not within months. Not while her perfume still lingered on the pillowcases. The next morning, I called someone I hadn't spoken to since the funeral. Miriam Calderon, my mother's attorney. She picked up on the second ring. "Skylar," she said softly. "I've been waiting for this call." We met at her office. She was older now, grayer, but her voice still carried weight. She remembered my mother. Her strength. Her insistence on doing things the right way. "She left the house to you," Miriam confirmed, tapping a file on her desk. "In both the will and the deed. There's no ambiguity. Then why is he still there?" I asked. And why was I the one locked out? Miriam sighed. Because grief blinds people, and opportunists slip in through the cracks. I left her office with a copy of the will, filed it the same afternoon, requested an emergency review at probate court. But that was just one side of the story. The legal side. What I needed next was evidence. The kind that couldn't be denied. Not even by a man who refused to look me in the eye when he threw me out. Back at my friend Ava's apartment, I opened my laptop. My mom had set up a security camera system in the house during her illness. Motion sensors. Audio triggers. Cloud backup. I didn't know if anything was still uploading. But I logged in anyway. The files were still there. Hundreds of them. Clips, timestamps, labeled by hallway, kitchen, office, bedroom. I started digging. Looking for patterns. for anything that could prove Delilah wasn't just a grieving partner's companion, but a calculating intruder. And then I heard it. Late night recording. Timestamp. 2:47 a.m. Kitchen camera. Low voice. Delilah. On the phone. He doesn't even ask questions anymore. I told him it's too painful to go through the will. He bought it. Give me a few more weeks and everything will be mine. He's completely attached, like a dog. Pause. Yeah. The daughter? She'll be gone by next week. She's already halfway out. I sat back in my chair. The rage didn't come this time. Just stillness. Because now I had her voice. Now I had her intent. Now I had proof. I spent the next 3 days compiling everything. Audio clips. Screenshots. Dates. Cross-reference with text messages my father had sent me, including the one where he said, "You're just causing problems, Skylar. You need to grow up." I didn't respond to him. I didn't scream. Didn't beg. Instead, I pressed upload, created a secure drive, sent it to my attorney, and began drafting a letter that would change everything. In the quiet of Ava's spare room, I stood in front of the mirror. I didn't see the broken girl from 2 weeks ago. I saw someone my mother would have been proud of. They thought I left defeated. They thought I walked away because I couldn't fight. But the truth is, I walked away so they wouldn't see me preparing. Because revenge is loud. But consequence? Consequence is silent until it isn't. You'd think after kicking your daughter out of her mother's house, after locking her out, threatening to call the police, you'd at least hesitate before mailing her a wedding invitation. But no. 2 weeks after they changed the locks, a thick, ivory envelope arrived at Ava's apartment. No note. No apology. Just gold-foiled cursive on cream paper. Michael and Delilah invite you to join them in a celebration of love. Love. I laughed when I saw the word. It felt like a paper cut from the past. Except this time I didn't bleed. They thought I'd cry. That I'd tear the invitation up. That I'd stay quiet, stay gone. But here's the thing they didn't understand. I never left to escape. I left to prepare. The house was no longer their shield. Delilah could redecorate, repaint, rearrange. But legally, she was squatting in a house that didn't belong to her. And now I had the documents, the voice recordings, the backup footage, and the law on my side. All that was left was the right moment to show everyone who she really was. Miriam, my mother's attorney, filed an injunction that same week. We submitted the audio clips as part of the petition, requested a court hearing to confirm the will's enforcement, and with the urgency clause applied. The court date landed just 4 days before the wedding. Perfect timing. Meanwhile, I worked behind the scenes. I contacted the venue listed on the invitation. A lavish country estate with a ballroom and a lakeside gazebo. I called as a vendor. Said I was the bride's cousin organizing the surprise video montage. I asked to meet with the A/V team. The staff agreed. They showed me the system, the projector, the screen. They didn't know who I really was. And I didn't correct them. I handed them a USB drive labeled Delilah and Michael, Love Story Slideshow. What it actually contained was the opposite of love. Back at Ava's apartment, I practiced my composure. Watched the video on loop. Delilah's voice whispering, "He's too dumb to question me. In a few weeks it'll all be mine." Each time I heard it, I grew calmer. Not colder. Not crueler. Just focused. Then came the hearing. My father didn't show. Delilah did. Wearing a tight beige suit and a bored expression. She claimed the will had never been properly finalized. That my mother verbally intended to leave the house to her husband. Miriam presented the original signed document, the notarized deed, and finally, the audio recording, played on speakers in the courtroom. Delilah's face didn't flinch, but her fingers gripped the table tighter with every word. When the judge leaned forward and said, "You have no legal claim to the property," I didn't smile. Not yet. Because I wasn't done. They had 3 days to vacate the house. That was the court's order. But I knew they wouldn't. Delilah was arrogant. She believed the wedding would cement her place. As if a ring and a rented dress would change a signature on a will. She was wrong. The morning of the wedding, I dressed in navy. Not black. Not white. Not red. Just calm, collected navy. The color of the storm before it breaks. I arrived at the estate early. Nobody noticed me. Just another guest holding a camera bag. I sat in the back. Quiet. Invisible. Exactly where they wanted me all along. And then the screen lowered. The music started. Guests clapped. The lights dimmed. And the video began. At first it looked normal. Photos of them. Fake smiles. Dinners. Sunsets. Then it shifted. The music cut. Delilah's voice played. The audio from 2:47 a.m. A few more weeks and everything will be mine. He's like a dog. The daughter? She'll be gone by next week. A hush fell over the room. Some gasped. One woman stood up. My father's shoulders stiffened. Delilah? Pale. The final frame of the video was a legal notice. Stamped by the court. Signed by the judge. A copy of the deed. A line that read, property ownership legally transferred to Skylar Jameson. I stood up. Walked out. Didn't look back. But behind me, I heard the chaos. The shouts. The silence. The disbelief. Everything they built on lies had just collapsed. In front of every single guest they invited to celebrate them. I didn't do it out of hate. I did it because my mother deserved better. Because love doesn't throw people away. And grief doesn't excuse betrayal. The wedding fell apart faster than I thought it would. By the time I got home, my phone had 37 missed calls. None of them from my father. But I wasn't waiting for an apology. I wasn't coming back to be welcomed. I was coming back because it was mine. The gates were still open. Half the decorations from the reception were still in the driveway. White petals scattered across the front steps like snow. I walked up to the door. Key in hand. The same key they'd replaced. Now restored to the rightful lock. The click of the door unlocking sounded louder than thunder. Delilah was in the living room. Still wearing her wedding dress. Mascara streaked. Shoes off. Phone in hand. Eyes wide. You can't be here, she hissed. You ruined everything. I stepped inside. Calm. Steady. Every step echoing against the tile. No, I said. You ruined it when you thought no one was watching. And now, the whole world watched. She moved toward me, rage flooding her face. You think you won? She spat. You think your little revenge changes anything? I met her eyes. I didn't come for revenge, I said. I came for closure. You just handed it to me. She tried to push past me, but I blocked the door. Court gave you 72 hours to leave. I reminded her. That was 3 days ago. You're trespassing. Delilah looked like she wanted to throw something, but instead she scoffed, grabbed her phone, and stormed upstairs. 5 minutes later, she came down with 2 suitcases, a pair of heels in one hand, a champagne bottle in the other. She paused at the doorway, turned, opened her mouth to say something venomous, then stopped, because my father had just walked in. He looked older, not just tired, aged, like the wedding video had drained whatever illusions he had left. He saw me, standing in the center of the home he tried to take from me, and for the first time in weeks, he said my name, Sky. But I didn't soften. Not yet. 3 weeks ago you stood behind her while she kicked me out of this house, I said. You told me I didn't belong in the home my mother left me. And now you want to talk. He looked down, ashamed. But not enough. Delilah broke the silence. You deserve each other, she snapped. Both of you, so obsessed with a dead woman. I didn't move. Didn't blink. Just said. Funny. She still had more life in her than you ever did. Delilah left, slamming the door behind her, leaving behind nothing but the scent of cheap perfume and unfinished lies. For a long time, it was just me and my father, standing in the hollow echo of a house that once held laughter. He didn't speak. So I did. I'm not here to punish you, I said. But I'm also not here to protect your shame. He sat down, shoulders heavy, voice small. I thought I was alone, Sky. She walked in and made me feel like I wasn't drowning. I nodded, not in agreement, but in understanding. She threw you a life raft and tied a weight to my ankles. He didn't ask to stay. He didn't ask for forgiveness. But when he stood to leave, I said one thing. You can visit the house, but not until you remember who built it and who kept it standing while she was dying. He nodded, silent, and walked out. I stood in the middle of the living room. The carpet still bore the mark of her heels. The walls still carried the echo of arguments and apologies never spoken. But it was mine again. Not just the deed. Not just the space. The voice. The memory. The strength. I went into my mother's room. Sat on the edge of her bed. The same one Delilah once violated. And whispered, "It's over, Mom. She's gone. He's gone. I'm still here." I didn't cry. But for the first time, I let myself breathe. I didn't sleep the first night back. Not because I was afraid, but because the silence was different now. It wasn't empty. It wasn't haunted. It was mine. The next morning, I opened every window. Let the air breathe through the walls. Lit my mom's favorite candle, honey vanilla. Not because I missed her, but because I could finally honor her without someone trying to erase her. I went into her room, opened the curtains, took down the heavy drapes Delilah had hung. I cleaned the vanity, polished her mirror, folded every scarf she owned, and kept the softest one around my neck the whole day. I didn't erase the pain. I kept it, like a photograph in a drawer. I didn't need to look at it every day, but I'd never throw it away, because it reminded me of where I came from, and why I never let go. The court issued the final judgment by mail, stamped and sealed. Full ownership. No appeals. The house was now legally and permanently mine. But that was never the point. I wasn't fighting for bricks. I was fighting for boundaries. For memory. For self-worth. My father never came back. He sent one message. I hope one day you'll understand. I did what I thought I had to. I didn't reply. Because the truth was, I did understand. That's what made it worse. He didn't want a daughter who reminded him of what he lost. He wanted comfort. He wanted silence. He wanted erasure. But I wasn't made to disappear. I repainted the living room, replaced every cushion Delilah had brought in, donated the glass vases, took down the fake wedding canvas they'd ordered, hung up a photo of my mom instead, one where she was smiling into the sun, holding my face in her hands. That's the version I choose to remember. Not the hospital bed. Not the goodbye. Just her loving and alive. The foundation of everything I still stand on. A month later, I started my own design business. From that same house. From my old bedroom. Now filled with art, sketches, clients, and laughter. Some people said I was brave. Some said I was cold. But I wasn't either. I was just done shrinking. Sometimes grief doesn't hit all at once. Sometimes it shows up disguised as anger, or silence, or a door slamming in your face. But if you wait long enough, if you fight the right battles, you'll find yourself on the other side. Not as who you were, but as someone no one can erase again. That's who I became. Not the girl kicked out, but the woman who came back, and took her name with her. Would you have done what I did? Or walked away forever? Let me know in the comments. And thank you for being part of this journey. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories of justice, healing, and strength.